Hello, my name's Ian Kirkpatrick Callahan, and this is a video presentation for the track I've made called In the Morning Time. In this presentation, I'll be discussing this track's influences, how I produced some of the main parts to this track, how some of the track has been mixed down, and also the obstacles that I had to overcome. But first, I just want to say, when I was making this track, I was well out of my comfort zone. And also, when I started making it, my intentions were to make it completely classical. But unfortunately, it wasn't possible because I just didn't have the resources. I did write a script, but because the video can only be 9 minutes long, there was a lot of script to read through, so I couldn't include it. The first half starts with the classical band, which consists of 5 instruments: a double bass, a cello, a viola, and 2 violins. These are stock instruments that you find on Ableton Live 10 Suite, and the bass instruments are an octave lower from the middle instruments, and the middle instruments are an octave lower than the higher instruments. They all play horizontally, which means they all play different notes, but when put together, they all work in harmony with each other, creating a broader melody. And on the session screen on Ableton, I've managed to pan the instruments differently, so when you're listening to the track, not only do you get the stereo effect, but it also feels like each instrument has their own place in the performance area, as if they were performing in front of you. This made it sound more authentic and more richer, just gave it a richer sound. By around 27 seconds into the track, the synthesizers come in, along with the pianos following shortly after with another synthesizer as well. Adding the piano gave the sound more depth, and also adding the synthesizers made the sound a little more vibrant and a little more colourful and brighter. Also in the first section, there's a solo which is played on a glockenspiel, which I played, and I played it to ear, and all the notes that I played sounded right to me. And not like the other sections where I would digitally quantize all the notes for them to also go in rhythm to each other. Instead, I left that and made it sound humanized. There are lots and lots of different influences put into this track. One main influence is a song by The Prodigy called Weather Experience, as the structure of it and the way it plays out is very, very similar to mine. For example, at the start of mine, you have all the strings, which represents like a town waking up, the sun's rising, the birds have started singing. And in the Prodigy's Weather Experience, it starts with synthesizers and strings, which would represent the sunny weather, and and the sun's out and everything's happy. Other influences include artists such as Sharky with the track Product of Society, as he uses synthesized strings in notes that are drawn out and in chords as well. Phil Lober with Alive, who also uses classical instruments and pianos, and just like my track, keeps the happy atmosphere with it. Another influence I'd like to mention is the soundtrack to a computer game called Oblivion, which is one of the Elder Scrolls series. When you escape the prison in the game and you come out to the countryside, the music is like the world's waking up around you for you to discover, and then for you to go off on your adventure within the game. The percussion on the first section was influenced by the Song 2 by Blur, and also again by the Prodigy Weather Experience. The synthesizers that I used on this track were used to make the track sound more vibrant and more brighter, more colourful. One synthesizer I used, one I call Trance Synth, which is basically, it's a sample of a synthesizer from Logic, which I sampled and put into the sampler on Ableton. And when the keys are played, it sounds just like the original from Logic Pro. And there's another synthesizer called College Pad, which is basically, I had a synthesizer, I made a pad sound in college, and it's just stayed with me ever since, and I've been using it in tracks, including this one. So then we get to the bridge of the song, which consists of two instruments, a string section and the bass guitar. The bass guitar was played as a slap solo within the bridge, which was influenced by the outro music of the famous television program Seinfeld. The string section on the bridge was it goes down in notation, and it goes from note C into the lower octave into note E. The bridge consists of 2 bars, which opens up with a suspended triad in C. Or another term for it is C sus4, which then goes into a G chord and then into an A minor chord and then finishes on a C chord. The purpose of the C sus4 chord is to make the listener feel like they're suspended in time as the track moves forward from the morning time into the afternoon, which leads us nicely into the second part. The second section is to represent everyone finishing their day at work or at school, and everyone's starting to rush again, trying to get home. So it's hectic, maybe a little bit chaotic, and but it still has its happy feeling to it. The main influence on this section is actually from a theme tune from a computer game called The Sims 3. Other influences would be dance music artists such as DJ Quicksilver, DJ John, Public Domain, Basement Jaxx, people like that, because they do something with the kick drum and the bass line, which I call the brother and sister effects. So when one's playing, the other one isn't, and they switch, and they do that constantly. And that's a main feature in the second section of this song. And I call it the brother and sister effects because they're like two siblings bickering at each other. When one says something, the other one has to reply, and so on and so forth. But I didn't have that with the beat and bass line. Instead, I adopted that to the string instruments and the synthesizers as well. What could I have improved on this piece? Maybe I could have got a vocalist, or maybe I could have had someone tell a story over the music, or maybe I had someone playing a live instrument. Believe it or not, what I enjoyed most about doing this piece was being outside of my comfort zone and yet still finding inspiration and ideas and influences to do a piece that a kind of music that I've never done before. While doing this piece, I feel I've learned quite a lot about music theory, and also how my mind interprets music and how to get it down into a DAW or on paper or whatever and turn it into a piece of music. So that's my presentation on my piece. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you around.